universal background checks, which will save the most lives. But this will save lives. And to listen to Lucy McGrath and other family members of those who have lost their loved ones, this is a giant step forward. Maybe not so much a giant, but a strong step forward. And if it's good enough for them, then we rejoice in passing it. As I say to members all the time with legislation, do not judge it for what isn't in it, but respect it for what is. And there's much to be respected in this legislation. On a happier note, yesterday we celebrated 50 years of Title IX, which has transformed equality and opportunity in our country. Are you familiar with the words of Title IX? Yesterday.
Hello, I'm Erica Hill. Thank you for joining us this hour as we follow this historic breaking news. You were just listening, of course, to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who, in reaction to this decision from the Supreme Court, which overturns Roe v. Wade, called the court radical and also said it is a slap in the face to women, eviscerating their rights, as she also weighed in on this, of course, historic bipartisan measure in the House today after passing the Senate on gun safety measures. So what is happening at this hour? The court's ruling today means there is no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion in this country. That historic decision upends 50 years of abortion rights. It immediately transformed the landscape of women's reproductive health and their choices in America. The court's ruling is very similar to that draft opinion, which was written by Justice Alito and leaked last month. At issue here is the Mississippi law, which bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. CNN's Jessica Schneider is live at the Supreme Court for us with these breaking details. So, Jessica, what more is in this opinion? What more is in this ruling?
Well, what's interesting, Erica, is that this landmark decision that we've been bracing for since that leak at the beginning of May, it's virtually identical to what Justice Alito wrote in that draft that we saw in May. This one, not much different, only addressing some of the dissent. And what he said in this decision is that Roe v. Wade was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement to the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. So what this opinion does, this ruling from a 5-4 Supreme Court, it eliminates the constitutional right to an abortion, and it now leaves the issue to individual states to decide if and how to allow women to get abortions. The immediate effect of this ruling is that about half of the states will eliminate the right to an abortion. About half of those states, about a dozen of those states, have so-called trigger laws, and those trigger laws will eliminate the right to an abortion almost immediately or within about 30 days. There are also zombie laws. Those are abortion bans that were in effect before Roe v. Wade in 1973 that will go back into effect. And then on the flip side, about 16 states plus the District of Columbia, they have passed laws protecting the right to abortion. Those states are expecting potentially an influx of patients from states that will or have or will soon ban abortion. The dissent here, this was a very forceful dissent from the 3 liberal justices, retiring Justice Stephen Breyer, as well as Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. They addressed the opening of their dissent saying, "with sorrow," and then they went on to say that the curtailment of women's rights and of their status as free and equal citizens, that is one result of this opinion. And Erica, interestingly, the conservatives themselves seem to be a bit at odds in their decision. While Justice Alito said that this opinion was confined to the issue of abortion and would not affect same-sex marriage, the right to contraceptives, in a concurring opinion, the conservative justice Clarence Thomas actually urged the court to reconsider its rulings on same-sex marriage and the right to contraceptives. So it seems that potentially this opinion overruling Roe v. Wade, eliminating the right to abortion, it could have profound effects as this conservative, solidly conservative court moves forward here, Erica.
Jessica Schneider with the very latest for us from outside the court. Also with us, Laura Coates and Steve Vladeck. Steve, I want to start with you. You're a constitutional law expert. As we look at this, let's pick up where Jessica left off. There are questions about not only the immediate implication in states with so-called trigger laws or these zombie laws, but specifically about other rights that Americans currently have, right? Same-sex marriage was brought up, contraception. Are those now at risk?
Yeah, Erica, I think that's a huge question coming out of today's decision. Justice Thomas and the three dissenters all think so. Justice Thomas specifically says in his concurring opinion that he would welcome the opportunity for the court to revisit Griswold versus Connecticut about contraceptives, Lawrence versus Texas, Obergefell versus Hodges about same-sex marriage. And the liberals point out that he's right. Justice Alito's majority opinion, Erica, goes out of its way to say that nothing in the court's analysis directly implicates those other rights. But it's hard to take that seriously when the gravamen of the majority's analysis is that there's no constitutional right to an abortion because there's no deeply rooted historical tradition of protecting a woman's right to choose. If that's the test, if that's the linchpin, it's hard to see why those other rights couldn't be on the chopping block. And Erica, if that's not the test, then as the dissent points out, the majority is being completely hypocritical.
So Laura, taking all that into account, our colleague Jeffrey Toobin said a short time ago, he sees this setting up a legal civil war. I would imagine that those efforts are probably already, ready to go to start that process. What should people be bracing for, Laura?
Well, when this draft legal opinion came down, people thought the writing was on the wall, and here it is, clear as day. It's going to be legal chaos. You're going to have interstate battles about how you're going to enforce these laws, let alone the very obvious notion that, as the majority opinion stated, that apparently stare decisis is not a straitjacket. That's a quote from the majority opinion. The notion here instead that you're not held to these notions because you have the opportunity to diverge from them. Now, it's true, over the course of history, there have been opinions that have been overturned. Plessy versus Ferguson, for example. There have been wrongly decided decisions, and the court should be able to be nimble to do so. But the basis and foundationally for why they did so here is not as clear at all. And why? Well, there are 50 years worth where people, that means me, my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother generation, all able to have a right where we woke up this morning having and no longer have because the Supreme Court has decided there is no real right for women to have those choices at the moment of contraception, or the moment of conception, excuse me. And as a prosecutor, Erica, I can't help but wonder, how do you intend for these laws to be enforced? Is there no doctor-patient confidentiality provision any longer? Are you intending for, in those courts where you're trying to enforce these laws, you're going to be able to have access to medical records or interrogate people in the office of the receptionist or the doctor about someone's menstruation? The womb is actually the site of the so-called crime. So whatever law would be enforced would have to be intrusive and invasive in trying to figure out what has happened there. There are a number of prosecutors already who are saying they will not go forward with prosecutions on these cases. But you have to wonder, it's one thing to have the law, the trigger laws that will be there, more than 18 states by the end of the summer likely to have abortion wholly illegal. But how does one enforce this with also taking into consideration one's other privacy interests in the law? It's going to be legal chaos. Forget the legal civil war. It will be impossible to truly carry out.
A lot of these questions, too, that you bring up in terms of how these laws could be enforced, where they start, where they end, those are going to be some of the new political questions that are going to come up. CNN senior political analyst Nia Malika Henderson also with us. Look, this has been a political rallying cry for the conservative right for decades, and they have successfully done what they said they were setting out to do, Nia, in this case. But the reality of how this is enforced, the reality of the questions which may now arise to those running for office and those in office about how will there now be support, whether it's maternal health support, both mental and physical health support for a woman who is forced to carry a child, perhaps a child which she knows will not live outside the womb, support for those children after they are born. All of those questions, how much will those start to figure, do you think, politically in these conversations?
immediately. They must, because if you think about the primary reason why women choose to get an abortion, it's financial. Something like 70% of women who get abortion say it's because they can't afford to have a child. A lot of these women already have children, so the extra financial burden would be just too much for them to bear. So then you start to look at the policies in these states that are intent on banning abortions. Will they expand the social safety net for women who now in these states will have to carry their babies to term? They're going to have to get all sorts of medical care. Will there be sort of paid family leave at these jobs? Again, we know that this is going to fall disproportionately on women who are poor of all races, white, black, Latino, Asian. Those are the women that are going to face this additional burden. They can't afford to go to another state where they can get an abortion. And listen, what are the legal implications that might come down to bear on them if they do travel to another state? Think about also the partners of these women. If they're not together, if they're not living in the same household, now does a man have to start sort of paying child support earlier than they would at this point? As the woman is pregnant, do they have to pay child support? I mean, there are all sorts of questions that this opens up for women and families all across this country. It's a new reality for so many people, a new political reality as well. Democrats have never really been able to seize on this issue in the way that Republicans have had over these last many years. Republicans have been intent on making this day a reality. It finally has come, and I think the question for Democrats has always been, how much do they want to embrace having abortion be the law of the land? They've been somewhat squeamish on that. And today, I think they're sort of facing the music of that squeamishness in some ways has led to this day where we have two Americas now. One where women can have access to abortion and family planning, and another America where, well, they will not have that right to decide whether or not they want to bring another child into their family.
CNN's Caitlin Collins also with us. She is live at the White House this hour as we wait for reaction from the Biden administration. We know that's coming, but really, I mean, Caitlin, this picks up perfectly on where Nia just left off. The Democrats, you know, for as much as you may hear some vocal Democrats saying this is important, people pay attention, this is something that we care about, here's why you should vote for us, they have never effectively leveraged that, certainly at the polls, in the way that Republicans have. And there has been some criticism over the years that President Biden himself has not been as outspoken as some in his party would like him to be. How much is that the discussion at this hour, both in the White House behind you and on Capitol Hill?
Well, it's a really complicated issue for President Biden. He is someone who is a lifelong Catholic. He was opposed to Roe in the early days of his political career. Obviously, he's been in politics for quite some time. He later came to embrace abortion rights. But, you know, until this draft of this opinion, this ruling that came out today had leaked several weeks ago, President Biden had actually never said the word abortion since he had been in office, since he had assumed the presidency. And so it has been this issue that now, of course, he is going to speak on it shortly and weigh in on this. They had been bracing for this moment, knowing that they had a pretty good idea it was coming after that opinion leaked. And so what people will be wanting to hear from the White House today is what President Biden is going to do about it, and to see what his tone is going to be in this speech, because you heard how furious House Speaker Pelosi was there as she was commenting on this, calling it a slap in the face of women. And so now all eyes will look to the White House to see what they are going to do to rally Democrats around this issue and their voters. And we know that they've been preparing some decisions. They may potentially announce a public health emergency. They've been readying the Justice Department for legal challenges in case there is criminalizations for people who travel out of state to get an abortion if they can't get one in their state, but they could in another. They want to eliminate barriers to that abortion medication. But no executive order that President Biden signs is going to restore the right that was taken away by the Supreme Court today, that constitutional right to an abortion. That goes to Democrats on Capitol Hill. So that's going to be the conversation that they're having. But we are expecting to hear from President Biden at some time today. We don't know exactly when yet. The White House hasn't updated his schedule, but they were prepared for this moment. They had been putting the final touches on his remarks after meeting privately with a lot of abortion providers, a lot of attorneys general. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, has been very outspoken on this issue ever since this opinion leaked, and she's been talking about this quite at length, but it will be everyone looking to see what it is that President Biden is going to say in his first response since this monumental ruling came down.
All right, Caitlin, thank you. Stay with us, everyone. We have much more as CNN's coverage of this historic day at the Supreme Court continues. Again, if you're just joining us, the court, in a 6-3 decision in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case, overturns Roe versus Wade and 50 years of history. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Sunday on CNN. In a year full of challenges, let's salute those using their platforms for good.
It's just so needed, and we have a lot more to do.
Join us as we shine a light on some familiar faces.
I have gotten a front row seat to what heroism is.
Turning words into action.
It makes us human.
If we still care, there is hope.
CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett. Sunday.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Move on that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessments. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces.
I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on.
No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered.
There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives.
Matthew Chance, CNN.
I'm Julia Chatterley, host of CNN's First Move. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley, weeknights.
Christiane Amanpour in Amsterdam, Jerusalem, Sarajevo, Afghanistan. I'm Christiane Amanpour in Iran. Christiane Amanpour, CNN, with elements of the Galilee division in Israel.
As dusk fell, people were still marching.
Here we are in Habila, a village that has not had any food distribution since June. When the families have finished looking at the names that are posted on those boards, they come here. This is now a memorial to the victims of the Srebrenica massacre. We're very interested to see what's going on here.
President, it's a privilege to address you from Sarajevo. Do you not think that the constant flip-flops of your administration on the issue of Bosnia sets a very dangerous precedent?
This is a pretty shocking picture. Would you condemn President Assad for 100,000 plus deaths? You still have huge dreams. They didn't take that away from you. In a matter of 26 days, legislation was passed. I wonder whether you ever think that other countries can learn from what you did. What made you be so passionate about the environment? I saw you listening to that testimony. You look pretty broken up yourself. Does love have a chance still of winning?
I will always believe that.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are following this historic breaking news. The Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade with its decision in the Dobbs case today. There's a substantial police presence outside of the Supreme Court right now. You see some live pictures right there on the other side of your screen. Protesters gathering. Many of them have been there, of course, on and off since this draft opinion was leaked last month. CNN's Whitney Wild is live for us there on the scene. Whitney, what are you hearing from people where you are? What are they telling you?
Well, it's a loud crowd, and it's grown a lot. And I'll introduce you to two people that we're speaking with. This is Lori Miller. She's come from California, sorry about that. So this is Lori Miller. She's come from California. She's out here today. Lori, can you talk to me about what brings you out here today and how you're feeling?
Well, I have a 17-year-old daughter, so it's very important to me that she has a right to choose when she becomes a mother, when she's ready.
How do you feel about what you saw today? What you saw out of the Supreme Court?
Well, it's terrifying. I don't know what's next. I don't think we have the systems in place to support young women having children when they're not ready.
What happens now?
I think that we can't stop. I think women need to show up to support women's rights.
And for you, what does that look like? Will you be back out at another event like this?
This is the first time I've ever come out, and I would absolutely do it again and encourage my friends to join me.
Can you talk me through when you woke up this morning and decided to come out? What was that moment like?
I was just curious I hadn't known what had happened yet, and so I woke up and just came straight here. There was no question I was going anywhere else.
Okay. Lori, thank you. I appreciate your time very much. Okay. All right, I'll introduce you to someone else. This is Savannah Craven. She is here in support and is supporting the opinion that came out of the Supreme Court today. So, Savannah, can you talk me through what is your personal connection to this issue and how do you feel about today?
Absolutely. So one of my good friends got pregnant our senior year of high school. She found herself in an unplanned pregnancy, and she had everything and everyone around her telling her that she couldn't do this because she was young, she didn't have enough money, she didn't have the means to have a child at this moment. And I was the only person that was there telling her. We didn't know each other very well. We were only a couple months into our senior year. And I told her, I was like, I don't know why, but I feel as though you are meant to be a mother to this child. And I am going to be here for you. I am going to support you every single step of the way, no matter what you decide to do, but just know that you are strong enough. Well, she ended up booking the abortion appointment, and the morning that she was going to take the 2-hour drive to our nearest abortion facility, the night before, she had actually filled up her tires with air just to make sure that it was all good, she could make the drive, and she woke up in the morning. She called me while I was in class, and I said, I have to answer, obviously, and she said, she's crying. And she was like, I didn't go. And I was like, you didn't go? And she goes, no, the air in my tire was flat. My tire was flat this morning when I went to leave. Like, I feel like this is my sign to keep this child. And she has gone, she has taken her circumstances and just achieved so much. Not only is she an amazing mother to a soon-to-be 3-year-old beautiful little boy, but she is now living in her own place. She's starting school. She has a great job, and she did it. I want women to know, I want everyone to know that women are stronger than their circumstances. And no matter what situation that you find yourself in, the post-Roe generation, the pro-life generation is here to say, you can. Abortion tells women you can't. You can't go to college. You can't achieve your dreams. You have to have the right to end the life of your child so that you can live your dream. And I think that's misogyny. I think that is disgusting. And I think that we're better than that in 2022. And clearly that our justices think so as well.
Savannah Craven, I appreciate your time very much. Thank you. Again, this is a large crowd. This is something that Capitol Police and other law enforcement agencies have been preparing for. There's a pretty significant police presence out here today. The big concern, of course, is that opposing groups clash. So Capitol Police have been swooping in. Anytime they see a little bit of a confrontation, they are separating these two groups. And then further, always the big concern is that domestic violent extremists will use this as an opportunity to, as a lone wolf, commit an act of violence. That's another thing law enforcement is preparing for here. But so far, after the opinion came out, it calmed a little bit. The crowd is getting bigger. So we'll see how the day goes. Back to you, Erica.
All right, we know you'll continue to keep us updated. Whitney, appreciate it. I also want to let you know we are just learning from the White House that the president is expected to speak at 12:30. So again, stay with us for that. President Biden expected to speak at 12:30. The Supreme Court's decision today marks a major victory for anti-abortion organizations across the country who've been fighting for this for decades. Joining me now is Mary Zock. She's the director of the Center for Human Dignity at the Family Research Council. Mary, it's good to have you with us. You said in a statement this is a huge victory, and you also noted, quote, "We must double our efforts to support mothers and fathers in need. We must support pregnancy resource centers." You talk about financial, material, and spiritual resources. That's something that has come up a lot, especially since this draft opinion was leaked. How will that support increase now with the overturning of Roe v. Wade?
We have seen the pro-life movement has always been a movement that has responded with love and care for moms and dads in need. We're calling upon churches, upon our friends and neighbors to support moms and to support these over 2,700 pregnancy resource centers that are across the country. We know that these efforts will double. We know that every mom who is in need and seeks help will find a friend in the pro-life movement.
So when you talk specifically about that love and care and those centers, they are so important to have. The reality, too, is beyond love and care, as you know very well. Women and families need financial support. They need medical support. Will you be also lobbying states to make sure that they're on board to step up financial services if needed, if a woman can't work because she has to be on bed rest or is suffering from postpartum depression, social services? How much of that will be part of your effort to make sure that across the board there are more resources available?
Well, we have already seen work from pro-life legislators who are passing legislation protecting unborn children and at the same time working to pass legislation that supports pregnancy resource centers and helps moms and dads in need. The solution to a woman facing an unplanned pregnancy is to walk with her and to equip her with the resources that she needs. And pro-life legislators around the country are prepared to do that.
Can that go beyond the pregnancy resource centers, right, to aid that could be used by women who maybe are more comfortable sticking with a primary care physician or a clinic in their town?
It certainly can, and the pro-life movement has always been supportive of women, of them receiving the health care that they need. And I think in the upcoming months and years following this decision, we will see legislation that is incredibly creative from those in the pro-life movement that hits the specific needs of women who are facing unplanned pregnancies.
There's a lot of talk about what we're seeing in certain states, especially states with trigger laws, and some of these newer laws that are being passed or proposed that are on the books, where women would be penalized, right, for seeking an abortion perhaps in another state. Those who sought to help women doing that could also be penalized. Do you support those moves? Is that the right way to go about it?
As I said earlier, the pro-life movement has always responded in love. We want to work to support women who are in need so that they can achieve their dreams alongside their unborn child. Our solution is support. Our solution is not to attack mothers. We do need to work on passing legislation that protects women from the abuses of the abortion industry that is so often pressuring women into believing that their only option is abortion.
But just to be clear there, so you do not support criminalizing, for example, a woman who may decide to cross state lines or someone who helps her, or you do?
The pro-life movement has always worked to be supportive of moms and dads in need. We have always worked to provide whatever resources she could possibly need. I think in the upcoming weeks and months, we will see different legislation come about to try to give moms and dads the resources that they do need. We are for protecting and helping women while we protect and help unborn children. The abortion industry should be targeted for the work that they have done over the past 49 years to place unborn children. Over 60 million unborn children's lives have been taken by the abortion industry, and mothers' and fathers' hearts have been broken. That is something that America needs to reckon with.
Mary Zock, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
There is still much more to come. Again, our breaking news coverage, the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, what this means for the country, what it means for you. Our coverage continues in a moment.
What do you see when you look at the surface? Just that, the surface. But dive deeper and new possibilities emerge. Essential intelligence from S&P Global takes you here, providing the data, risk assessment, and workflow solutions you need to plumb the wonders beneath. A better, more prosperous future awaits. It's yours for the seeking. S&P Global. Seek and prosper.
I'm Jim Bitterman in Paris, and this is CNN.
Real news that shapes our world.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
We're continuing to coverage this historic breaking news: the Supreme Court eliminating a woman's constitutional right to an abortion. Reaction now from Capitol Hill. CNN's Manu Raju is there. Manu, what are you hearing from lawmakers?
Really sharply divergent reactions, really breaking down mostly along party lines, hearing Democrats say this is a cruel decision. That's what Nancy Pelosi's words, all vowing to make this a big issue in the midterms. Dozens of House Democrats just marched from here to the steps of the Capitol, across the street to the Supreme Court, chanting and calling for change. Now, on the Republican side of the aisle, praising this decision and also downplaying the impact that this could have on the midterms, arguing that voters ultimately will vote on the economy.
I think what the Supreme Court just did was that they chose to endanger the lives of all women and all birthing people in this country. But not only that, they've chosen to strip rights from men too. Because frankly, the right to our own bodies and the right to form our families, this is something that belongs to all of us, and it does not belong to lawmakers. It does not belong to 9 Supreme Court justices. It does not belong to those justices who were appointed by presidents, many of whom didn't even win the popular vote in this country. This is cementing of minority rule in a lot of ways, and we're going to have to fight a long road to get it back, but we're not going to give up.
Well, I mean, that's a good question, because certainly the Dems have been trying to use this as an issue over the last 2 months since you saw the leaked opinion, and it does not seem to have moved the needle. If it has, not much. Again, I think most people are pretty entrenched with what they believe on this particular issue and what ought to happen. What I think a lot of folks are going to be surprised at, and I had this back in Michigan as well, is that people didn't necessarily know it was going to revert to whatever the state had prior to Roe. And that's going to be the new starting point for each state.
Yeah, and this issue essentially will be fought state by state, and also some different reactions among some Democrats who, on the other side of the issue on abortion. One, Henry Cuellar, who just survived a tough re-election race in his primary, who opposes abortion rights, told me that I am pro-life when I asked him about this ruling. And Joe Manchin, who also opposes abortion rights, was critical of this decision. Even though he supported Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch, he put out a statement saying he's deeply disappointed with Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, because he said when they testified under oath, they contended that they believe that Roe versus Wade was settled legal precedent. Erica?
Manu Raju with the latest for us. Manu, appreciate it. Thank you. Also with us to discuss the decision, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. Senator, good to have you with us. You put out a statement. You tweeted, "Hold on to hope. Don't give in to despair." And in a statement, you said Democrats have tools to fight back, from legislation in Congress to executive orders from the president to initiatives at the state and the local level. How effective do you think those measures are going to be?
Well, they're going to be just as effective as they need to be. Look, I am spitting mad over this. We have 6 extremist justices on the United States Supreme Court who have decided that their moral and religious views should be imposed on the rest of America. This is not what America wants. And in a democracy on this issue, the Supreme Court does not get the last word, the people do. And we are going to fight back. We've got tools, we're going to use them, and in November, we're going to make sure that we elect enough people who believe in that democracy that we can pass Roe versus Wade and make it the law of the land again, only this time we'll do it by statute and enforce it.
You know, the Speaker also said today in reaction this would be on the ballot in November. Respectfully, though, Senator, this issue, as important as it is to a number of Democrats, you're a perfect example of that, has never been the rallying tool for Democrats that it has been for Republicans. This has been an effective rallying tool for decades in terms of getting to this moment for many conservatives. So what's going to change between now and November?
Let's talk about why that has been so. About 70% of Americans want to see Roe versus Wade maintained as the law of the land. One Supreme Court nominee after another stood in front of Congress, raised their right hand, and said, not interfering with settled law, I believe in the rule of law, and said Roe versus Wade is settled law. That means that a huge proportion of the population in America believed this is not a huge issue. It's protected. We're going to be fine. And those of us who were ringing the alarm bells were told, don't worry about this. Nobody is going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, a small minority has finally gotten the votes. The Republicans who have worked for decades, knowing that they could never pass this through Congress, they could never get it through a state ballot initiative, they worked on getting it through getting extremist judges through. Judges who promised to follow the law, but wink, wink, nod, nod, were cleared in order to get where they got today. And that is to say that their religious and personal views will be forced on the rest of America, and that they will use the government in order to enforce it. Notice, just yesterday, this same set of extremists said, oh, it is not possible to let the state governments get engaged on the question of guns. It is important to have federal protection for guns. Well, I'm telling you, the rest of us are ready to rally back and say it is important to have federal protection for people who are pregnant. It is important to recognize individuals' rights, individuals' needs. It is important that we be able to make these decisions for ourselves and not have a government that steps in to do that, because 6 extremists on the Supreme Court want the government to enforce their religious beliefs.
So on a
that's
couple
not going to happen.
On a couple of those points here quickly, the fact that this now goes back to the states, your home state of Massachusetts, the highest court there upholding the right to an abortion, passing laws to protect abortion rights. We're seeing more of that in a number of bluer states. The reality of what can happen, you tried the legislative route not too long ago. That failed. An executive order isn't going to reinstate this, and even if it did, it could be overturned by another president, as you know. So realistically speaking, when you say there is work to be done legislatively and you want to see something on a federal level, what does that look like?
It looks like getting 2 more Democrats in the United States Senate who are willing to support both filibuster reform and making Roe versus Wade the law of the land. It means hanging on to the House of Representatives, and it means passing Roe into law. That's what November will be all about. And recognize we don't have to wait till November. There are things we can do right now. We can obviously support people in states that are outlawing abortion. We can help with our contributions. We can help by volunteering. But we also call on the administration. Senator Patty Murray and I led a letter with more than half of the Democratic senators calling on President Biden to use the tools that are available to him right now. He can make medicated abortion more widely available. He can help with money and time off for people to be able to move across state lines. He can consider using federal lands as a place where we can set up abortion clinics and people can go there who need access to abortion. We are not without actions that we can take. We need to have hope, but we need to hang on to this anger because we use that anger to fuel change.
We're out of time, but I do have to ask you, we're going to hear from the president at 12:30. Has President Biden over the years been a strong enough advocate? Yes or no?
What matters is where he is today. This is the moment in front of us. It's not what mattered back when nobody thought that Roe was going to be thrown out. What matters is what we do today. The president needs to pick up every tool available to him and use it to protect access to abortion, use it to protect the individual rights of those who are counting on our president to do that.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, good to have you with us today. Thank you. Stay with us. Our breaking news coverage of this historic moment, the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade. Our coverage continues on the other side of this break.
When you dream more, you need to move more. with over 45% of sub-Saharan Africa using mobile money, innovative digital payment solutions are giving people financial freedom. Access FacePay uses AI to make transactions more secure and accessible for over 31 million customers. Access. More than banking.
Egypt is transitioning towards a sustainable, circular economy. Through the opening of the Gabal Al Asfar wastewater treatment plant, it is using treated water to irrigate agricultural land and is producing organic fertilizers. The plant has been designed to reduce waste and optimizes the use of water resources. It generates electricity and saves carbon emissions, ensuring that over 8 million people across the country live better, healthier lives.
Summer in Abu Dhabi. It's everything you want, but so much more than you'd expect. It's relaxing days at the pool in water as chilled as your drink. It's bonding with family, but upside down. And even more so, it's burning rubber on an F1 racetrack, roller coasters breaking records. It's seizing the day or owning the night. It's literally drinking 23 karat gold. It's uniquely designed to make it the summer of your dreams. Abu Dhabi has everything you need to summer like you mean it.
To open doors, to develop contacts, and to unlock secrets, it takes trust.
It was the first time he really came out of his shell in front of a camera.
Trust that you'll listen.
So great that you're here today. It just highlights what's making a difference.
That you'll be honest. I don't want to pry, but what sort of conversations do you have with them? Trust that you'll be accurate and you'll be fair.
It was an unprecedented move, very eerie.
All the roads have been closed off.
Describe the theme that you arrived to.
The Apache attack helicopter. This is what Captain Wales has been flying. Do you want talks with them?
What is the point of talking now?
Huge amounts of police support coming into this protest. We continue to monitor the government in crisis. This was the Duchess's first news interview. Rare access indeed.
That's what it's all about.
Max Foster, CNN.
Interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
Our mission here at CNN, the news comes first.
More breaking news that we are following right now. Welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
We'll have much more in our breaking news in a moment. The Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade in a historic decision. We are also following some important developments, though, at this hour on Capitol Hill, where House lawmakers have just started debate on the first major gun safety legislation in decades. That vote expected a short time from now. The bill is expected to pass and to head to President Biden's desk for his signature. CNN's Lauren Fox has the details for us.
Erica, in just a short time, we expect the House of Representatives is going to move ahead and have that vote on the gun safety legislation that passed out of the Senate last night with 15 Republican votes. One of the most notable members supporting the bill, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. I talked to him last night on a call with reporters, and he explained why he thought this was the moment to pass gun legislation. Obviously, his support really critical to moving this process forward. He said that while Republicans have a lock on rural and small town America, he is concerned about some of the losses that he's seen in the suburbs. The hope is that they may be able to regain some of those suburban voters in the midterms, helping cement Republicans' ability to take back the Senate in just a couple of months. It just gives some insight into why the minority leader was so invested in helping move forward an issue that really divided his conference. Even though 15 Republicans supported this bill, that means there were more than 30 Republicans in the GOP conference in the Senate who did not back it, Erica. So obviously Republican and Democratic leadership support of the bipartisan effort on gun safety really critical to passing this bill yesterday, but showing, of course, that there's always a little bit of politics involved in those decisions. Erica?
That is true. Lauren, appreciate it. Thank you. Let's return now to the Supreme Court's historic ruling, which overturns Roe v. Wade. In the wake of the court's decision, millions of women have a lot of questions about abortion care, about medical care and access moving forward. Joining us now with some insight, CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. So Sanjay, talking on practical matters today, as we look at what this could mean in terms of access to health care and to making those medical decisions depending on where you live. We know what it was like in this country before Roe versus Wade and what some of those options looked like. There are concerns moving forward in some areas that women may resort to something like a back alley abortion, as we had heard about pre-1973. What are some of the concerns within the medical community today? What is that discussion about the risks?
Well, first of all, I would say that if you look at the public health community, the medical community, they're pretty much in lockstep in terms of their opposition to Roe v. Wade being overturned. Some 1,000 or so deans of public health schools, large organizations like the AMA and the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, their big concern is that maternal mortality and morbidity rates in the United States are already among some of the highest in the developed world. In fact, let me just show you this. I think this surprises people sometimes when we look at these statistics. The United States is in orange on the right. This is maternal mortality compared to other wealthy countries. And it's not even close, as you can see there. And if you look at the statistics more closely, you'll find it's primarily women of color and primarily women in poverty who are comprising a lot of the women who have morbidity and mortality associated with pregnancy. The concern, to your question, Erica, is what might happen if there is this ban on abortions. And what they find is that in the first year, they believe that some of those numbers I just showed you, as bad as they already are, would go up at least 7%, but then in subsequent years could go up some 21%. And that's just because, more women potentially having significant morbidity and mortality in the process of childbirth. Now, with regard to, sort of back alley abortions, this was obviously been a concern all along, even, 50 years ago, the idea that women would then resort to unsafe abortions. New England Journal of Medicine just released this editorial saying, what the experience around the world has shown us is that when you restrict access to legal abortion, it does not substantially reduce the number of abortions, but does reduce the number of safe procedures. And that results in increased morbidity and mortality. I will tell you, a lot has changed, Erica, over the last 50 years medically. In terms of being able to do things more safely. But I think, again, the public health community pretty unanimous in their concerns that maternal mortality and morbidity rates are already among the highest in the developed world, and they'll just go up.
Yeah, and part of those concerns, too, stem from something as simple, although not always simple, as access to quality medical care for pregnant people as they are going through that. There are a number of other questions that have come out of this, specifically one involving miscarriage. So for people who may not be familiar, after a woman has a miscarriage, often she then needs to take a pill that is essentially a medical abortion to empty out her uterus. And there are questions about whether that is something that could potentially be vulnerable as well. Is that a concern within the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of, frankly, there's a lot of confusion still talking to some of these leaders within the public health community about exactly how that all sort of plays out. What will be the access to certain medications like that that can decrease the sort of morbidity or complications after a miscarriage or even after pregnancy overall. So, you know, it's unclear. I think people are still sort of grappling with this. The 1,000 or so people that have signed this letter did so over the last month in anticipation of what's happening today, but with the full understanding that it's still not clear exactly how this all, you know, sort of transpires for people specifically and how it's different from state to state.
And that's one of the big issues, right? Which you just made me think of as you were saying that, state